Our gospel lesson, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15, verses 10 to 20. Then Jesus called the crowd to him and said to them, "Listen and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but it is what comes out of the mouth that defiles." Then the disciples approached and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees took offense when they heard what you said?" He answered, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind guides of the blind. And if one blind person guides another, both will fall into a pit." But Peter said to him, "Explain this parable to us." Then he said, "Are you also still without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth enters the stomach and goes out into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this is what defiles. For out of the heart comes evil intentions, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile." The gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Please be seated. O Lord, open my mouth, and my lips will declare thy praise. Amen. When I was in my mid-20s, I remember an occasion when I had several friends, in case people are, and I wanted to take them to, we all wanted to go duck hunting. And so to get to where we needed to go, I had to shoot a compass bearing because it was dark when we were going to go, and I knew we wouldn't be able to see our way. And so I shot this bearing, and I said, "This is exactly where our duck blind is." And I was the only one that was familiar with the area at all. So I began to take my friends and I through the woods to get to the marsh. And as we were walking along, I keep looking at my compass saying, "That's not right. No, that can't be right." And I'd keep going a little bit, and I'd say, that's just not right. It's even worse. And I kept doing this, doing my own thing. Like I just kept thinking, I'm gonna do my thing because I know the right way. And you know something? Within a half an hour, I had made the best circle of my life. I was within 50 feet of the maple tree from which we started. And I often go up to the end of Dutch Point Road because the tree was on a little bit of a hill, and I think someone cut it down. But that tree was always also a guide point. And I just said to myself, these guys have no clue what I've done, and I'm not going to tell them. I said, we're going to keep walking like nothing's wrong. And that's what I did. But this time, when I was going through the woods, I trusted my compass. And it led me out exactly where our blind was. I was 10 feet off, but to me that's hitting the mark perfectly. There's times in life when it's easy for us to trust what other people are saying as gospel, to listen to all the different voices that are out there in the world, to convince ourselves that we know how to get there. We know how to get there, and there's nothing that we need from anyone else. And sometimes, even if I didn't admit it, I knew I was lost. But then there's other people in my party who had no idea they were being lost or led by a blind man, because that's also what I was. So they were trusting that I knew what I was doing. I was supposed to trust my compass, but I didn't. And we ended up exactly where we started. And life's like that. When we listen to all the voices in our world, the still small voice of Jesus can be lost. So Jesus has a crowd listening to him. And the disciples approached and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees took offense when they heard what you said?" You always like to hear that, you know. I was saying to Susan Lee yesterday that Phil and I were fishing with a group of other men on Island Lake, and nobody likes to hear, so-and-so would have done it better. And I could hear them out in the lake, Jim Gillespie and Phil. I could hear a motor trying to start. And then I hear this other voice saying, "If John Crawford was here, he'd get that started on the first pull." But 20 minutes later, they finally arrived. And Phil came up to me and he said, "If I hear your name one more time, I'm going to punch him in the head." Jim Gillespie was like 3 times as big as Phil. But both of them were older now and arthritic, and it's not easy to start a motor in the middle of a lake after dark. Jesus encounters the Pharisees who are saying, or the disciples are saying, "They didn't like what you said. Do you want to rephrase what you said yesterday? You want to change what you said about how we find the Lord and the kingdom?" And Jesus, without hesitation, he said, essentially, if you start poorly, you'll end poorly. If you start at the wrong place, you will end up in a wrong place. So the first thing you have to do is you have to listen carefully and know what it is that you want to believe and follow. Now, Jesus went on and he said, in this case, the Pharisees, they think you should do this. You have to clean every pot, every glass, every food utensil, everything that you touch. You have to make it clean. And we're not talking about just scrubbing the dirt off of it. We're talking about a ritual that was important. And Jesus said, that's going to take you in the wrong direction. That's going to lead you somewhere where you believe that if you do all of these things that are prescribed, that will make you righteous. And Jesus said, be more concerned with what is in your heart and your mind. Be more concerned about who you are as a person, because what comes out of your mouth is who you are. That's where you start in life. That's how people will see you. That's how people will judge you. So he said very plainly to them, if you think evil thoughts, then evil thoughts come. Now, I also want to caution you and say, just because, I'll give you an example from my life. Why not? When I was playing hockey one time, this guy, in the last couple minutes of the game, knocked me flat. Knocked me completely out on the ground, on the ice. I woke up in an ambulance going to the hospital. I briefly remember them trying to cut my gear off, and I'm like, I don't want that. And thankfully, the doctor played hockey, and he said, let's try not to do that. And then the next thing I remember is just being in the emergency room, and I was okay. But all the while this is going on, all I can think about is, I'm coming back here next year, and I'm going to lay him out. Yeah, yours truly. Because I was angry. I said that to a friend of mine the other day. I said, sometimes I get angry. And they're like, oh, no, you wouldn't get angry. I'm like, you don't know me. And all that year, I nursed an illogical anger for this person. Oh, and I'm studying to be a minister. And I'm nursing this grudge very carefully. I'm babying it. And I'm making sure it grows. And sure enough, the tournament comes around. And I said, there he is. And I did exactly what was in my heart and mind. And I put him down. I hurt him. And you might say, some would say, well, that's just the way life is, John. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. But Jesus is talking about this very thing here. If there is a pride, if there is a evil that we let sit in our heart and mind, it is like it's like not trusting your compass, which is Jesus. It's like saying, I can do this on my own. I'll be the judge. What I did was wrong. It was just wrong. On every level. And that's what Jesus is talking about here. What we allow into our minds and hearts to guide us, the voices that we want to listen to in the world, can take us down paths that are just simply going to take us either in a circle or away, or certainly away from where we want to end up. Friends, the gospel is, Jesus took a lot of the Jewish laws and said, here's how they've been interpreted lately. But the Pharisees have made some grave errors. They're not wrong about everything, but they've made some errors and they need to be corrected, and this is one of them. So, what do you take away from the sermon? Dave Nickerson always comes to the door and he says, so this is what your sermon is, A, B, C. And I'm thinking, not even close. No, just kidding. Yeah. Well, that's good. I got it then. And Dave's happy. He goes off and he has a good week. This is what I'm saying very simply is there are so many voices that you will hear every single day. But if you listen to the words of Jesus and you know the words of Jesus and you're willing to be humble and listen, it will take you away from things that your minister did or would do. And you'll be happier for it. Since I'm talking about my sins this morning, I was playing hockey in Negawak. And I played for the New Jersey Devils. That was the name of our team. I thought it was kind of appropriate. The minister and the rest were pretty much fishermen. And this guy, all night long, I had short cuffed gloves on, and he kept hitting my forearm right where the glove ended. And he'd keep hitting just above my skate. And I said, if he does that one more time, there's going to be trouble. Sure enough. Long and short of it is, this guy was a lot bigger than I was. I gave him a black eye, and he gave me a big fat lip. And I thought, and of course the elders of the church, were there watching the whole thing. And all one of them said was, you're lucky you got away with that. I'm like, yeah, I know. The next day, I'm in Tim Hortons, and in this guy comes, in his RCMP uniform. And I with my collar. What a lovely pair of disciplined human beings we are. We both had a laugh, and that was it. Not everything turns out to be an absolute disaster. But we weren't at our finest, were we? And life can be like that too. Sometimes we didn't put our best effort into it, and it comes out half-baked. So as Christians, we can put lipstick on a pig and say, this is beautiful, when we know it's not. Or we can say, the Lord calls me to do better, and so I will. Those are the lessons that as a minister I've tried to learn over again. I'm not always successful. Not always. But if I hear the voice of Jesus and I'm willing to be humble, I can follow. I may not see clearly for very far, but I can follow Jesus. And isn't that what it's all about at the end of the day? We want to hear the voice of Jesus. There's even a hymn, I heard the voice of Jesus say, I can't remember anymore. Come unto, yeah, I heard the voice of Jesus. I'm not listening. I heard the voice of Jesus say, come unto me and live. That's the rest of it. So come to Jesus and live the best life that he calls you to live. If you want to know what people called me in Negawac when I played hockey, you can ask me at the door.